As early as this week, hundreds, even thousands of FBI agents could be shown the door after senior FBI officials and prosecutors who worked on January 6th cases were forced out. But in New York, a top agent is vowing to dig in, a kind of grassroots start in a fight against what critics say is a series of moves by Donald Trump that will make the U.S. less safe.
Welcome to the Ken Harbaugh Show. I've got Bill Kristol with me. He's editor-at-large at The Bulwark. And in our wargaming exercise a year ago, back in February of 2024, he played President Trump. And I hate that we're in this position, Bill, of saying, told you so. But everything you predicted, everything we gamed out in that exercise is coming to pass. And some of it we didn't even anticipate it so bad.
Yeah, I think you and I were on the, what would you call it, the more extreme side or hawkish side of how dangerous Trump could be, how far advanced the authoritarian plans were. He's not just a goofball with sort of random ideas, some of which are very bad, of course, but the infrastructure beneath him has really developed, obviously, over the last 4 years, and it is there's a plan and a plot, you might say, in many areas. The one thing I didn't anticipate, and I don't think you did either, was Elon Musk. So I think that's added a whole level, both of chaos, but also of danger to what was already a very dangerous situation.
How would you assess that danger posed by Elon Musk? Is it just the unlimited resources? Is it something ideological? Why is this uniquely dangerous?
Because I had assumed that Russell Vought, the designated head of OMB, Steve Miller, deputy chief of staff at the White House, the kind of heritage Project 2025 authoritarians, let's call them in shorthand, they would be in charge, and they have been to some degree. And you would have a pretty systematic effort to do very bad things in terms of policy and also to really centralize power in the presidency and so forth. But those guys, I think, would do it more, especially Vought, maybe more than Miller, in a sort of systematic way, which is both in a way more dangerous, but also lets you see where they're going, and you can try to block them in certain turns, either with Congress or with the courts or in any other way. Musk is so, has dropped in with so many resources, and really with the Silicon Valley, let's just blow it up attitude. Now, in some ways, I think that's ultimately, and I'm curious what you think about this, I think it's ultimately a vulnerability for them, because I don't know that people really want a Musk-type attitude to government agencies that are running important programs that are important to Americans, and we depend on their impartiality, their reliability, their due process. If we don't get something we're supposed to get, we have there's a person you can appeal to and so forth. I think Americans might rebel against Musk's style, but it's also very intimidating, very disruptive, and does things very fast. So I think the actual damage is sort of what do you want? The guy who knows what he's doing, who kind of comes into your store and starts to take things, maybe in a very systematic way, but you don't quite notice at first, and they go gradually? Or do you want the guy that, comes in and just bashes everything? And there's downsides to each. The combination is very dangerous, though. I think that's what strikes me, I guess.
It's the clown with the flamethrower metaphor in government right now. And I do think it does provide an opening for Democrats. The problem is, how do we get Americans to care? I worry about that more now than I ever have in my political life, having lived through multiple elections now where I feel like the country I knew didn't turn out to be the country I knew. And I'm looking at the voting public now and wondering if they really care what Elon Musk is doing to USAID. And in a way, it's kind of genius that that's the first target, because it is not provoking the kind of ire that it should. It is an easy punching bag. And for whatever reason, Elon Musk has been able to avoid so much of the criticism he deserves, but hopefully it adds up.
I mean, on Musk, you're absolutely right. He endorses the German AfD, the Alternative for Germany, which is the neo-Nazi party there. He not just endorses it casually, but he does a video for them and so forth, writes an op-ed. This is one of the most senior people in the U.S. government, or let's just say close to President Trump, endorsing the neo-Nazi party and an important ally of ours, which has done whatever, what everyone can say about Germany, they've done a pretty good job for the last 80 years in pushing back, preventing those people from coming back. And that's kind of a core element to the German system. They exclude the AfD from government at both the federal level, coalition governments, even at the federal level and the state level. Musk just barges in and now is one of the closest advisors to the president of the United States, legitimizing this party. And again, that's when I've written about this a couple of times. It's hard to get people alarmed, and it's understandable. I mean, it's a little obscure and it's a foreign country, but the degree of craziness, of extremism, racism, that's going on in Musk and Musk circles and Trump circles. They just put this guy in a senior position at the State Department who's, hangs out in a cheerful and friendly way with neo-Nazis. And I'm not using the term loosely. I mean, genuine neo-Nazis. So BD, I think his name is. So, this is what we're facing. My only, but my only, realistic, my view of the American public is they voted. The ones who voted against Trump aren't happy. The ones who voted for Trump, slight plurality, they don't want to say they haven't. They want to give him a chance. They're not focused right now. They're not following politics closely. They can't follow all the ins and outs, and let him have a chance to fix the federal government. So I've never thought you could flip 5% of the American public in 2 weeks, after he gets inaugurated. That's, I think, unrealistic. I wish there were more alarm and outrage. I think what people like us, if I can put it this way, have to do is pick the individual instances, highlight them, and don't have the expectation that 20 million people are going to get upset about it, but maybe 500,000 people will get upset about it. Maybe people in a particular state, people who have businesses that are affected by tariffs will get upset by tariffs. People who live in Florida and see hundreds of thousands of hardworking, legally here Venezuelan immigrants who have paid money to get their work permits and so forth, suddenly being denied temporary protected status and expelled. That's not maybe the greatest national issue, but it's certainly an issue in some communities. And I think a whole bunch of issues are like that, actually. I'm very much of I was at a meeting of big shot Democrats the other day, and we have to decide ahead of time what 2 or 3 issues matter, and we know that this issue is problematic, and this issue is what people care about. I think that's foolish. And my experience in politics has been it's hard to predict what issues take off. And different issues matter to different people. And if you had predicted in 2021 that Biden would get hurt in his first year the most in the middle of the pandemic, and what's today, February 4th, 2020, if you predicted 4 years ago, early February 2021, what would really clobber Biden by late 2021 was the withdrawal from Afghanistan, which seemed popular at the time and didn't anyway. It was unlikely. It seemed to be a headline event. We were already drawing down. And inflation, whereas the problem was the pandemic. People wouldn't have predicted it. Same in 93 with Clinton. I could go through a bunch of instances, but these things are hard. Politics is very variable. But I do think with a new president, the key is to, be opportunistic, be flexible in one's criticisms of him. Don't rule anything out, and let different people criticize different things. The military community could be up in arms if he cuts, if he goes after the VA. The law enforcement community could be up in arms if he goes after the FBI. A lot of Trump voters are related to or are, FBI agents, former FBI agents, friends of FBI types agents. That has its own vulnerability. So we can't expect a silver bullet, but I think we can do a lot of good. And we can't expect the public to totally focus now, but I think getting to that middle tier of people who in turn influence the public, So if the relatives of the FBI agents are upset, they start talking to their coworkers and it trickles out, percolates out. So that's kind of my theory of the case. I think it's a little frustrating because we don't see the immediate results, but there's no immediate result anyway to be had. Well, the one immediate result will be to stop what Trump and Musk are doing. And that's important for the sake of the country to the degree we can slow it down. But that does get to the fundamental problem of the total collapse of the Republican Party into Trump's arms. They control Congress. And as you and I were talking just before the show, the less than perfect opposition of the Democratic Party at this point, but the combination of those things for now has given Trump and Musk very much the upper hand. But, this can change pretty quickly.
It's Ken Harbaugh. Quick break to say thank you to everyone who supports this show via Patreon. We're adding exclusive content every week there, so if you haven't signed up yet, head over to patreon.com/Ken Harbaugh. Every single cent we get through Patreon goes back into this show, whether it's researching topics like the piece we recently did on the U.S. Army's counter-fascism training during World War II, or my reporting trips to Ukraine to show what that country is doing to defend its democracy. These episodes can't happen without your support. I'm deeply honored that so many of you have pitched in. If you've been waiting, now would be a great time. We've got another reporting trip to Ukraine coming up and other ambitious projects in the works. We're all in this together. Thanks for everything. I think you're right about the need to be adaptable. I also think we might need to consider different messengers.
Well, totally. And incidentally, we don't get to pick them, right? You and I can consider what we want, and we should feature people and promote people. But you know what? They should promote themselves. One of the things I'm most puzzled about, and you've been around and seen this, and I mean, where's the ambition? If you were a young Democrat now, member of Congress, a governor, maybe not even a governor, maybe a state legislator somewhere, right? Even. Don't you find one of these issues that you know a lot about, maybe you have some connection to, you're a veteran, you're law enforcement in your family and so forth, and really make a big deal about it. And don't wait for sign off from Hakeem Jeffries or from your governor of your state, right? Just go out and do it. When I was much younger, got involved in Republican politics, Jack Kemp was very important to me because he had a vision for the party that was optimistic and progressive, forward-looking, and exciting, really. He was personally a charismatic guy. This is in the 70s. He was a backbench member of Congress. The leadership didn't even like him. He wasn't even on the relevant committees. But he said, you know what, we need to go in this direction. And everyone else is, oh, come on. And he turned out to make a huge difference. So I think we need more of that entrepreneurial spirit. I got to say, AOC is not on my wing of the Democratic Party. I'm not on her wing. Maybe it's better to say of the Democratic Party. But I admire her for getting out there, and she's been pretty effective, I think, to a degree. And so there should be more people who take that model. Don't you think?
I do. I think 100%. And I have come a long way on AOC. She inspires me on a regular basis. Even though we may disagree on policy issues, she is sharing my outrage. And that's what we're missing. I think we're seeing glimmers of that. David Hogg was just elected vice chair of the DNC. And I think he's got enormous potential and more of a future than Chuck Schumer, that's for sure. There's some potential there, but the Democrats do a really good job / bad job of creating roadblocks for that kind of upward momentum.
I mean, I don't agree with Hogg on things that I don't really know him, but also I have no view on that. But I don't know, maybe he's too young, but and too hostile to moderate Democrats, honestly. But having said all that, you know what? He won that election, and let's see what he does. I'm very open-minded about this. I'm perfectly open to I like some of the younger members of Congress, some of the governors. I admire them. I think I agree with them on a lot of issues. But I'm also open to the proposition that someone I've barely heard of a year from now could be doing a great job on some issue and could be doing real damage to Trump and to Musk. And that could be an elected official. It could also be other people, obviously, in the sort of civil society world and candidates for office. I really hope we get people running in 2026. And I hope they don't do the usual, I want to go make sure I can raise $8 million first. And I want to get the blessing of Chuck Schumer and of, Hakeem Jeffries and all that. Just take a shot. Look, if you don't, and then if you have the time, if you have the money, I'm not telling people to, ruin their lives here, but I think I think that was the trick of 2017, 18. Afterwards, all the leaders took credit, and they did a pretty good job once the cycle was underway in 2018 of helping some of these candidates. But I've talked to a lot of those people around in 2017, 18. They decided to run.
Oh yeah.
They weren't told to run. They weren't blessed by anyone. They were outraged. Yep. And Abigail Spanberger or Alyssa Slotkin or a lot of other people just decided, this is someone's got to do this, and I don't see anyone else quite doing it in my district, so I'm going to try to do it. And I hope we have that attitude this cycle.
And a lot of them were vets. I'm including Abby and Alyssa in that category. As ex-CIA. I was one of them, and running in a Trump plus 35 district.
I forgot, as I was saying all this, I forgot I was talking to one of them. And good for you, what? And yes, and it's okay, so you can't win in a Trump plus 35 district, but it helped, right? You were making the case, you got to some voters. I mean, I do think that's where we really need and the outrage is bad. The one thing what I wrote in my morning shots for the Bulwark this morning is just a step back from the day to day. And just, we are in a crisis. We're in a crisis that's a serious crisis, and it needs the kind of thinking and resolution, fortitude that people have had to display in previous crises to get through them, and there's still a certain amount, don't you think, of wishful thinking that's, if we just kind of, they'll kind of go away. It'll kind of fade away if we just kind of keep calm and file the right lawsuits and introduce some resolutions,
Well, there's certainly wishful thinking amongst the comfortable class, the people who aren't going to suffer that much. But if you have relationships with those communities that are subject to some of these outrages, the panic has set in a long time ago, and we need to share that with our elected leaders. I want to talk about that Morning Shots newsletter. I think it was under the heading "More Dangerous Than Watergate." Your piece was, "Are we up to the task?" And you take on the assaults on the FBI, which is the systematic approach. Elon Musk's attacks on USAID are the clown with the flamethrower approach, but they are being very deliberate, it seems, in trying to gut the FBI, defang it, and make sure, defang it in terms of ever being able to hold Trump and his lackeys accountable, but repurposing it to go after his opponents.
Totally. I mean, what's happening, so I agree there's sort of different categories of things they're doing. They're overlap and they're related, obviously. No, but the weaponization, the potential weaponization of the defanging of it on the one hand and then weaponizing it under Elon Musk, under Kash Patel, these guys blur together in my mind, under Kash Patel on the other, that's very dangerous. What's happening at Justice, FBI, conceivably in the intelligence world, DOD, it's a world you know better than I, but I mean, the combination of those things, when political scientists study coups, or just the erosion of democratic government and the rise of authoritarianism in foreign countries, they often talk about the power agencies, the security agencies. Those are the key ones that the aspiring dictator has to get hold of. And those are the intelligence agencies, the law enforcement agencies, the military, basically. Maybe a little bit of the money too, And Trump people have a lot of money now. And so it is, I think, genuinely dangerous in a very fundamental way. But I also agree that going after USAID and all these other agencies, I mean, that's what Elon Musk, I don't believe Elon Musk had ever heard of USAID 4 days ago. And then he starts tweeting about it because they tell him it's, full of, what they tell him, it's in our interest to destroy it and to demonize it. And Americans don't care much about foreign aid and humanitarian assistance, allegedly. So we can do it harmlessly and it can become a trophy of ours and so forth. And that, I totally agree, that needs to be fought. And we can't take the view that, Americans don't care if, health programs in Sudan or assistance programs in Burma are cut off. Maybe not all Americans care about that, but some do, And I do think it paints a picture of what they're up to, the kind of cruelty and the cruelty is the point kind of thing. Anyway, I'm for fighting on all these fronts, and I agree so we're in agreement on this, I think. But I do think the security agencies is objectively kind of the most dangerous. And also once those go, and when a lot of people quit from the FBI or from Justice, that takes a long time to build that back up. And it's certainly when they control those agencies. I'm sorry to go on too long. I don't know. Then I was at a conference with Democrats. Said, 2026 should be a good year. Are we confident that 2026 is going to be a free and fair playing field in that election? If they control huge amounts of the methods of communication, if they control where to bring lawsuits, if they control which local and state officials they can go after, if they control Department of Justice type enforcement of voting rights and so forth. I mean, I think we're going to have an election. I don't think it's going to be like the elections are canceled on November, whatever it is, of 2026. But is there going to be a pretty big thumb in the scale? So we need to really fight these things now, not wait for 2 months before the election.
Yeah, well, this brings us almost full circle, because one of the predictions a year ago was that rapid move to take over the power agencies, DNI, FBI, DOD, and by all accounts, they are succeeding. I hate ending the show on a down note, though, so would love your thoughts on the courage displayed by the New York FBI office, and some of the pockets of resistance to these illegal actions of President Trump.
The other thing that's remarkable about this is Bureau leadership is publicly pushing back on the Trump administration. Brian Driscoll, the acting director of the FBI, who was installed by the Trump administration, has issued guidance and messages to the workforce saying that he doesn't understand exactly why these names are being provided, but it shouldn't be seen as an indication of misconduct. And he said that FBI agents can't be fired without due process. And as you said, the head of the New York field office, in a strongly worded email yesterday, saying, look, we're in a fight here. People are being targeted because of cases they worked on. That's not right. We're going to, as you said, dig in.
I'm encouraged by that, and I admire those people. And a lot of these people are putting themselves out there, and this is their livelihood, and they could get fired and disciplined or transferred to a much less, not just a less attractive place. That's kind of the way people put it. Wildly inconvenience and discomfort and disadvantage their family because, the degree to which these people are vulnerable isn't people understand that if they think about their own situation, maybe if they were once at a mid-level in a corporation, with arbitrary bosses who want to punish you, they can make your life pretty miserable. The civil service protections are okay if they're followed, but they're not following any of them. And someone said to me the other day, well, they can sue and they probably would win this lawsuit. Fine. So 3 years later, they'll maybe get back pay after they've been transferred somewhere, after they've had to put their family through some a move they didn't want to make. And incidentally, the back pay they'll get is from the government. Trump and Elon Musk aren't paying anything. It's just we are going to pay because they are mismanaging and these organizations and treating people unfairly. So, they're happy to do it. Honestly, they just regard that as the price of doing business, right? Let the taxpayers pay for the people who might win in individual cases against us. So, yeah, I do think this is very alarming. And you mentioned the pardons earlier. I think just in passing, maybe we can close. I think the pardons on the first day of everyone, all the violent offenders, the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, not just the. Maybe there were some hundreds of people who were caught up in the crowd. Most of those people were pled guilty or were convicted, finished their terms anyway. So it's not, they didn't get big sentences if that was the case, if they didn't attack police and so forth. But the pardons of everyone, that was really the tip off, right? Don't you think? That was the moment when you really, go ahead. Yeah.
I also think that's our best wedge issue for now. That's the thing that can wake people up.
Yeah, it should. And we should stay on that. And every time, honestly, one of these terrible people who got pardoned is convicted of some later crime, but also just what does it say? What does it say that he's just, it's one thing to say maybe some of these cases were a little overdone and I'm going to pardon the most innocent ones who have some months left on their parole, but not innocent, but the least guilty ones, I guess. But no, that wasn't that. And now it's all pro January 6th, right? I mean, when they fired the prosecutors in the DC attorney's office or people at the FBI, it's because they were on the other side of January 6th. The other side is the side of defending the Capitol Police, defending the peaceful transfer of elections, defending the law enforcement, the judicial system of the United States. That's the other side against Trump and his people. Yeah.
Well, Bill, keep doing what you're doing. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm afraid we'll be talking about this quite a bit in the weeks and months and years to come.
Keep up the good work yourself, Ken. It's good to see you.